Tess, how are you doing today? Thanks for being a guest on the Holistic Hub podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Steffi. I'm just thrilled to be here today.
Well, for the listeners, for those of you who don't know, Tess Hilmo is the founder of Consider This Nutrition bars, which are low histamine bars. And I have used them in abundance with a lot of the different clients that I work with. And I was really excited to get you on the show, Tess, just to be able to talk about your brand, but most importantly, really wanting to talk a lot about your own personal journey, because I'm assuming you didn't just wake up one day and say, I just want to create some low histamine bars. So you probably have a journey in there somewhere. We talked a little off air about it, but go ahead and tell the listeners about you and what led you to creating this brand.
Absolutely. I created these bars out of my own need. I started making them in my kitchen because I was hungry. And COVID hit in 2020. That triggered MCAS for me. I know that my MCAS is genetic because my mother has been diagnosed with it. She's had a positive histamine urine test, as has my aunt. And looking back in our family line, we can see that, oh, my grandmother also had the same issues and that sort of thing. So I can see a strong genetic line. But it was triggered for me in 2020, either by the virus or the vaccine, who knows? But 2021 came and I was nearly bedridden. Suddenly I had asthma, adult onset asthma. I had dysautonomia, not POTS. What I have is actually bradycardia, which is where my heart rate drops really low. It was dropping down into the 30s. In the middle of the night, I would wake up and could hardly breathe because my heart rate was so low. I suddenly had Hashimoto's thyroiditis, which I'd never had before. I had of course, all the fatigue that goes with all of that, and the joint pain and the brain fog, Stephanie. The brain fog was so bad. I was a high school teacher at a private academic high school, and I taught an advanced research class where students had to write a 20-page paper and adjudicate that before a live panel. So a very advanced academic class. And I had to quit. It was a dream job of mine that I loved. And I had to quit because I couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't think, and I knew that I couldn't mess up the students' grades, right? As soon as I realized this is a senior in high school, I cannot make a mistake on their grade. I knew I had to quit, and it was heartbreaking for me. And I ended up nearly bedridden for almost 2 years. Going to every doctor. You know, at first we all I think many people in this community, we assume it's autoimmune. And I was told maybe it's lupus, you know, a lot of people have that same road. And then none of the tests quite line up. So they say, well, it's something, we'll just watch it, but we don't know what it is. I had a lot of doctors tell me I was just stressed out. And I was like, I'm stressed out because of the pain I'm in, you know, but really just felt lost. And eventually I ended up in the right neurologist's office who diagnosed me with a dysautonomia. And he gave me a book. There's a book on dysautonomia from the national organization. And he said, here, this just explains what it is. And there was a chapter within that book on MCAS. And as I was reading that chapter, everything rang true to me. And
the light bulbs went off.
The light bulb. And I was like, so grateful, literally started crying just to have some answers. And so realized, I need to find an allergist that actually treats MCAS. And so that started me on that journey. And my husband is a physician. He does neurotrauma rehabilitation, so works with brain injuries. And I reached a point at about that time that I had halted speech. Have you ever heard of that with MCAS?
Yes, I have. But can you explain that for the listeners?
Absolutely. So halted speech is where you have so many inflammatory cytokines in your brain. They cross the blood-brain barrier that you cannot finish a sentence. I couldn't finish a single sentence. And I spoke in a very halted way. Was like, like that.
Yeah.
My brain knew what it wanted to say, but I could not get the sentence out. I couldn't remember words, but more than that, I couldn't speak fluently. And so I was in a pretty bad state at my worst. But figuring out my diagnosis, moving to a low histamine plan initially just to try to stop the flares was really helpful. And then my husband took me away for our 30th anniversary. We just went up to the city about 40 minutes away to my favorite hotel. And since they knew it was our anniversary, when we came in, they had out a tray of goodies. And it was chocolate-covered strawberries, and it was cookies, and It was everything that I couldn't eat. So, this is just where you're at when you're at your worst and you just feel you're exhausted by how sick you are. I just started crying. That was common for me at the time. I don't cry a lot now, but at the time, I just sat down on the couch in this beautiful hotel suite that he got for us with this beautiful tray of chocolate covered strawberries. And I just sat down and started crying because I couldn't have anything on that tray. And because he loves me so much, he said, "Don't worry about it, honey. I'll go find something for you." And he left and he was gone for an hour because he went to every 7-Eleven in the city, every it was late at night by the time we checked in because we had gone to a place. So every convenience store he could find open. And he was reading all the ingredients, trying to find something without soy, without sesame, without things that he knew would trigger me at that time. And he came back with a bag of Lay's potato chips because
it matched the description of what you needed.
that was the only thing he could find that didn't have, all the chemical ingredients that I just wasn't tolerating. Well, that night I went to bed and I dreamt the company. I dreamt the bar. I dreamt the formulation. I dreamt the branding. I know that sounds crazy, but I absolutely just feel like the universe said to me, "You need this bar, and there are other people that really, really need safe nutrition that will heal their gut." So by the time we went on this trip, I was a little bit better. I had started 30 plants a week movement. Have you heard of that?
Oh, the 30, did you say 30 plants a week?
Yes,
oh, yes.
30 plants a week.
Optimal for gut health, our gut microbiome. Very important to get that for diversification. Absolutely. That's foundational.
Yes,
to health,
yes.
in my opinion. Yes.
Yes. So when my immune system was just on total hyper overreaction, my husband turned to me one day and he said, "Your gut has to be a mess. You probably have a horrible microbiome." And he was right. I had always eaten a lot of sugar and processed foods because I didn't have any health problems before I got sick. And so I felt like I could pretty much eat whatever I wanted, and I didn't have a great diet. So he turned me on to the 30 Plants a Week movement, had me read the Stanford gut study that it's based upon. And so I had been following that by the time we went away for about 9 months. And that was massively helpful for me. After about 9 months of being on 30 plants a week with low histamine, I'm able to do the 30 plants a week and have it be low histamine, not a problem. Then I really had much more immune stability. And I was able to add in, at that point, I was able to add in a lot of foods I couldn't tolerate before, like tomatoes, yogurt. And my quality of life just was so much better. I was still battling MCAS, and it wasn't by any means a cure. It was a really strong foundation. So fast forward, we went away for this anniversary trip. I dreamt a bar that was, not exactly, but I said a bar that's high fiber and low histamine. What if we could create a bar that had a high plant count that actually helped your gut microbiome and was low histamine? If it could have some protein, a good amount of fiber, a variety of low histamine plants, that would be an amazing bar. I would love to have that myself. And I woke up in the morning and I told him of this dream and I said, someone should create this. And he said, Tess, quit your job that you can't do anyway and do this company. You could do it on your own time and take as much time as you need to build it. So that was 3 years ago. And I just said, yeah, this community needs safe nutrition. It really came from a place of deep care and concern for people who have so few options. And I was that person, and I was hungry. I just wanted safe food to have in my purse, on the airplane, a bar that I knew felt good in my gut and would be healing. So, and you had said, we had talked earlier, and you had mentioned that you felt like when you are moving forward in purpose, the universe, I truly believe this, just puts the answers in your path. And that has 100% been our experience with this business. I came home from that trip and I just put a note out on LinkedIn. If anyone knows of a food formulator who's interested in a serious challenge, then I would love to talk to you. The head of R&D from Cliff Bar reached out to us and said, I would love to do a truly clean bar And I am interested in the low histamine movement, is what she called it at the time, but this idea of more people asking about this. And I would love to take on the challenge. And she charged us next to nothing. I mean, her rate was so low for us because she really believed in the product, and she helped us formulate the bar, which I could, of course, never done on my own. I needed someone professional to do that. And then she put us in touch with the suppliers. We have very specific ingredients. Our ingredients are not the same ingredients in another bar. I can give you some examples about that, but how detailed we are. And she understood all of the importance of that and really helped guide us through it.
I have chills from your story. It is just, it's every time I talk with someone who's just so purpose driven because of what they've been through and how they create something so, magical because in helping people on their own journey as well. And that's just such a wonderful story to hear. Thank you for sharing that. And I would love a little bit later on to dive into some of the more detail-oriented stuff regarding like your bars, why they might be a little bit different. But first, kind of bringing it back to your story. One, I want to elaborate on, I love how you talked about the 30 plants a week that you were able to do low histamine. It's actually something I talk with a lot of my clients about with ones that I recommend a low histamine diet. There's actually quite a large amount of veggies and fruits and foods that you actually can eat on a low histamine diet. So you can absolutely do expansion there and to help support the gut. But aside from that you had focused on, what are some other foundational supports that you found really helpful for you in your journey? Like what helped to, I guess, continue to get you better?
Absolutely. I'm happy to talk about that. And it has been a journey. As I stand today in 2026, I would say 85% improved from where I was. There's no cure to this, but I am so much more stable and so much more happy and grateful. I do want to say just quickly about the 30 plants a week. It's important for people to realize these are not whole servings.
Yes.
Teaspoon counts as a plant point. So you're just trying to get 30 plant points throughout your week. And a teaspoon counts. So, and variety counts. So you buy the tricolored quinoa. Tricolored quinoa is 3 plants. And I buy 1 red apple and 1 green apple and 1 Honeycrisp apple. And instead of, 3 red apples during the week, I'll eat 3 different apples. And that counts as 3 different plant points. And herbs and spices, 1 teaspoon. So I love making a big vegetable stew and throwing in as many herbs and spices as I can. And I can easily get 15 plant points in 1 bowl of vegetable soup. So it's not difficult. And grains count. Ancient grains are my favorite. I have a 12-grain granola that I make that I eat 2 or 3 times a week that has, it's just thinking outside of the box a little bit. So some low histamine grains are millet and teff and amaranth and puffed quinoa. Those in a granola, and sprinkling them over anything else or just eating it as a granola with some tolerated milk is really, really easy to do. So it feels overwhelming, but I can't tell you how many of our community has reached out to me and said, it's so easy.
Yeah.
I gamify it and it's just a teaspoon of each and it's really easy. So I want to say that. Okay, then other things I've done to help stabilize nervous system work, of course. I'm a very type A person. Breathing, I'm a shallow breather. I didn't know that about myself before I started doing nervous system work. I had a very traumatic childhood. I had not my entire childhood, but I had some trauma points in my childhood. And I realized that I think my shallow breathing started then. It's a protection mechanism that our nervous system has. And so learning how to slow down, be intentional, breathe deeply helped. Then actual treatments that have helped me. At first, I started by I've tried every treatment. We could talk about just about any treatment. I've tried it. And I've tried every supplement. But now I'm on a small handful of supplements. I brought it down to maybe 5 supplements that I truly believe in for me. I know we're all individual. But the treatments that have helped me are the nicotine patch therapy was immensely helpful for me. It was my cardiologist that suggested it, cardiologist that specializes. He has a dysautonomia clinic. So he specializes in tachycardia and bradycardia as it relates to dysautonomia. And we're located in Utah. And so it was really funny, actually, funny story. I go into him because a lot of the community here, because it's a high Latter-day Saint population, they don't smoke. So in his office, he said, there's this new treatment that's coming out. I can only get half of my patients to take it. But of those half that take it, 80% see a marked improvement. Would you be willing to try it? And I was like, heck yeah, I don't have that issue. I'm not a smoker, but I have no problem with a nicotine patch. She was trying to explain it to me. It's not addictive. It's a very low dose you're taking. You take it transdermally. It's not the same as the gum or the pouch. It's a totally different response that your body has. It helps the nervous system relax. Right? It helps your vagus nerve. It helps it release more acetylcholine, which causes a more relaxed state, which is why people enjoy nicotine. It allows you to reset. And it also specifically works with long COVID. He explained it in a way that you can do some research on, but it specifically works with long COVID. I had no hesitation. I was willing to try anything at the state I was in. So that was offered to me, it's been 1.5 years ago. It was very early. At the time I took it, no one was talking about it. In fact, it took me probably 6 months before I was willing to post about it on my Instagram page because I was afraid of the feedback I would get. I just felt like it was unheard of. I don't know. I just felt like people would think I was absolutely crazy to be taking a nicotine patch for long COVID and MCAS. But by the time I did post about it, I was still unsure, but I was surprised. We have a pretty strong community. It's on Instagram, Consider This Nutrition. And it's a growing community there of people fighting MCAS and kind of all my solutions, my food solutions, and different things I've done. Anything I learned from, I share there. And I had an overwhelming response of people saying, me too. I just didn't want to talk about it yet, but me too. And it helped for me, my brain fog. That was the biggest thing it helped for me. And then second to that, it got me back in the gym. I struggled to get through a day. So one day I was like, I think I'd like to go to the gym. And that thought alone blew my mind. I couldn't believe I had a desire to go to the gym when before it was like, can I get to the mailbox today? So energy and brain clarity. After it took the full 60 days, he had me take a 7 milligram patch on my hip. He said, I have skinny arms and kind of wider hips. And so he said, put it on the fat. You'll be less irritated on the fat. So put it on every morning after my shower. And I just wore it for 24 hours. I didn't have an issue. I didn't have any side effects. I didn't have any sleeping issues with it. And I did it for a full 60 days. And it wasn't until about 50 days that I noticed a difference. But those last 10 days, just every day I had more clarity, more energy, and it really hasn't gone away. It really was a significant step up for me that I've been able to maintain.
That is so incredible. So I've had a handful of clients most of the clients that I work with are dealing with mast cell activation syndrome. And a handful of them I have actually used the nicotine patch with and have seen very similar results as you are mentioning, like just with the brain clarity, the decrease in anxiety.
Yes.
Multitude of different symptoms that I've seen like resolution with, which is just so cool to hear. So I have 2 follow-up questions regarding that for you. One, did you just do the full 60 days and then you haven't used it since? And then did you have to incrementally increase up to 7 milligrams, or did you do okay adding the 7 milligram patch right away?
I did okay adding the 7 milligram patch right away. I know that some people start lower, but I did fine with it. And I was anxious to get all the help I could. So for me, I just felt like, let me see if I can tolerate it.
Stick it on.
Because it came from my cardiologist, who I trust so deeply, who really works with this community. So it's not like something I read online and I wasn't sure about it. It came from someone who is deeply entrenched in this community, really cares about helping us, has shifted his entire cardiology practice to this. And so when he brought it up, I was like, yes, I will try it. He told me that anytime I have a COVID exposure, I should go back on it for another 30 days. So, of course, I have had other exposures. I haven't had COVID again since 2023. But anytime I have an exposure to really any virus, I go on it. I had just recently I had that horrible bronchitis type of virus that's been going around. And I jumped back on the nicotine patch I'm on it right now for 30 days. I'll be on it. So it's just kind of like helping my body.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
get back to that stable point again. It's been really helpful. And I didn't have any adverse effects from it at all.
Awesome.
And I'm very reactive. There's many things that I can't take. And so I was pleased that for this, it was a good solution.
That's wonderful. And so, so great to hear that you said that you're 85% like moving forward, like with your life, living a happy life, purpose-driven life. I mean, that is so, so wonderful. It's going to create so much hope for people listening to this. And before we kind of dive into a little bit more regarding like histamines and your bar, I want to actually just ask you, was there anything else that possibly helped you on your journey as well? Because you mentioned nervous system work, eating nutritionally well, and you mentioned the patch. Just curious if there was a toxic load component to it, anything else that you found that seemed to need addressing for you?
No, for me, it was pretty clearly tied to COVID. I know that everyone is different, but I was a school teacher, so I got every single year that there was a new strain of COVID that came out. My husband either brought it home from the hospital because he was a hospitalist, or I brought it home from school. So we were just getting each other sick, and it was pretty clearly tied to that for me. But as far as other things that have helped me, I have started a microdose of the GLP-1. So and I would love to talk about that if anyone's interested about that experience, but with the nicotine patch, that was a year and a half ago, I would say that brought me to a solid 70%. And I stayed there, with really focusing on healing my gut, nervous system regulation, and the nicotine patch brought me back to about 70%. Of course, knowing and avoiding my triggers is number one. There are many things that still trigger me that I just have built my life around avoiding. If I'm in a public space and someone with strong perfume comes next to me, I leave. I know that I can't be exposed to that trigger, and I don't feel bad about it. I just excuse myself and go somewhere else. So learning how to navigate my environment and control that to some degree has been really important too. Dr. Efren put out a study last October, I'm sure you've heard of it, where he tested 87 patients with MCAS using a microdose of a GLP-1. And of those 87 patients, 85 or 84 had marked improvement, and the other 3 left the study, not because they didn't have improvement, but I think one moved, one's insurance changed, that sort of thing. And so they fell out of the study. But I read that study in November and just kind of had it in the back of my mind. I don't have any weight to lose. In fact, my issue with MCAS is the opposite. I tend to get too thin, and that worries me. And so I was not interested in the GLP-1 because I didn't want to take anything that would make me even more frail. My issue with MCAS is I get overly frail at times. And so I did not want to be more frail. Anyway, went back to the same cardiologist appointment in January. I go to him every 3 months. Went in January, not thinking anything, just having my checkup. And he said, "Have you heard about the GLP-1? I've just started that last month, and already I'm seeing patients have a good improvement. Are you willing to try it?" I told him my concerns, and he assured me at the microdose it would not affect my appetite. And so I said, I'm willing to try it. So the beginning of January, now is the end of March, so 3 months ago almost, I began a microdose of tirzepatide. He chose tirzepatide because he said it is least likely to have side effects. This is what he told me. That's just my experience. He said it's the most tolerated by this community. And then the microdose, half of the lowest starting dose. I was also worried about it not being covered by my insurance and the cost of it, but it's surprisingly affordable. He prescribes it for me. I get it filled at a compounding pharmacy, and it costs me $65 a month. They give me a 4-month supply, and it averages out to be $65 a month, which is, considering all the other medicines I've gone off since January starting it, it's kind of been a wash. I was on Xolair. We haven't talked about that, but I was put on Xolair 3 years ago, and I went off Xolair when I started the GLP-1. And I've tried to go off Xolair in the past, and I would break out in hives immediately. Just a couple days past my shot being due, I would break out in hives. But it's an expensive drug, and you're tied to the every 4 weeks. And so I want to go off it. So I thought, well, I'll start the GLP-1. And the next week I went off Xolair and have not had a recurrence of any issues. I can tolerate more foods. I have more energy, less symptomology. My baseline is just higher. So that's the other thing I've tried that's been successful.
That's wonderful. And, $65 a month averaging out is really almost nothing compared to what people are spending on supplements per month. I mean, hundreds of dollars a month to, take all these variety of supplements and this and that. So, no, I mean, that is so wonderful to hear your story and what has been absolutely so helpful for you. And that's why I love to dive into it, because everyone's story is different. What people have tried to support them because of their root cause or causes, right? Absolutely is different. And so it's just absolutely wonderful to hear your side of how you've been able to get to where you are today. So thank you for sharing more about your own journey.
And the idea of the tirzepatide is that the root, what Dr. Afrin's, your reader should really go look up that report. You could just look up, GLP-1 Lawrence Afrin, and the report from October will come up. And the idea behind it is that it just manages the inflammation. Again, not a cure, but it's an inflammatory condition. And if we can bring the inflammation down, then our organs get back online. And, my asthma I don't take any asthma medications. I haven't taken any. I was taking asthma medications. I haven't taken any. Of course, my voice will get froggy right when I say that. That's not asthma. That's me getting over a cold. But I don't take I just don't have the same need for medications that I had before because the inflammation has come down. For me, in 3 months, I haven't lost any weight at this, which is good. That was my goal.
Yeah, for you, right.
For me personally, but each individual, you could talk with your doctor and figure that out.
Absolutely. And, that's the thing is that I'm always talking to individuals about, or people messaging me, is that anything that we can do that your body tolerates, that we can help to lower the inflammation, so that way we can allow your body to breathe and then to focus on the healing instead of fighting the inflammation responses so heavily. That's worth it, right? That's going to help. And so hearing your part in this and how that's helped you get to another 15% better, we can even term it more, because now you said that you've been able to tolerate more foods and things like that. And your baseline is just higher, which is great. So let's talk a little bit about histamine food lists, because something that I get messages a lot about are going to be, I am trying to be low histamine, but I'm looking at all these different lists online and they're all different. Like one list says tahini's okay. The other one said it's terrible for me, right? Another list says this is okay. This one I can't tolerate. So can you expand a little bit on how people can navigate looking through histamine food lists, and specifically what the SIGHI list is for those who may not be aware?
Absolutely. This is so important. I'm really glad you brought it up. A big part of our work with this company was understanding the science behind histamine in foods. Histamine is a breakdown of the amino acid histidine. So all foods have amino acids to different degrees and different amino acids in each food. And if there's histidine in that food, then the natural byproduct of it aging is to create histamine. Years ago, there was no way to test for that. All they could test is that amino acid in that food or not? They could not test how much of it was in the food and how quickly it degraded within that food. So historically, when they would a lot of those low histamine lists online are outdated. They're based on old science that is assumptive science. We know that histidine is in that, so we're going to call it a higher histamine food, when in fact, it's a very low amount, or it doesn't break down, it doesn't actually convert. So the science had to evolve. And now it's very easy to get a histamine test on a food. In fact, for our protein bars, independent lab tests, each batch for histamine, we know that our ingredients are low histamine, but we just want our consumer to feel confident that we are going through every single step to make sure that they're low histamine, and you have that data. And to do a histamine test on a batch costs us $120. This is not expensive science anymore. It's a very simple test. You do have to find the right lab to do it, but that has the equipment, but it's easy to do. So you have to look for the current histamine tests. And let's talk about the SIGHI list. SIGHI, most people would just call it the SIGHI list. That's out of Germany. Germany is on the forefront of histamine science. They are the ones that actually figured out how to test each individual food and came up with all the lab testing equipment to do that. And there is a group called the Swiss Institute for Histamine Intolerance, and they test all of the foods every few years. The most recent list is from 2023, which for science is pretty recent. And they actually will go in and test each food. The SIGHI list is free and available online. It is the most science-based, inclusive histamine list that's available worldwide. Everything else you should consider as anecdotal. If someone's posting something on there, like maybe they're an influencer and they're saying, get my histamine list. If it's not the SIGHI list, it's anecdotal and you're taking a risk of it being based on personal experience or outdated science. And the risk with that, Stephanie, is that we over-eliminate foods. People look at those lists, like you said, and they're overwhelmed at what they can't eat. And the SIGHI list actually helps us see all that we can eat. And you can trust that it's updated, actually tested, modern science. And so we have it pinned to the top of our Instagram page. Just on Instagram, consider this nutrition as a free resource for you. You can just comment list and it'll be sent to your inbox, but you can find it. You could just search for it, SIGHI histamine list, and make sure you're opening the 2023 version. And what they do, it's fantastic. They break the foods down by category. So they have a fruit, vegetables, grains. They even have an additive category and things that are put in chemical category, things that are put in our shampoo and our soap and that sort of thing. They test that. So, so they break it down by category. Then they categorize each food 0 through 3, 0 being low, and then 1, 2, and 3. And that's important because histamine is not yes or no in food. It depends on how much of that amino acid histidine is in that food. And so if it's a yes or no list, it unnecessarily restricts us. I can tolerate, even at my worst, I could tolerate all zeros and many ones. And now I can tolerate all zeros, most ones, and some twos. And so to understand it's a spectrum helps you try more foods and have a less restricted diet, which then goes back to your gut microbiome, right? Having a diversity of foods is so important for our gut microbiome. And when we go on a chicken and rice diet because we're trying to eliminate our symptoms, we end up damaging our gut microbiome. So increasing the variety of plant foods, grains, nuts, there's some nuts we can do, seeds, some seeds we can do, herbs, spices, all of that. By increasing that, then we have more microbiome diversity, more immune stability. And we can be low histamine as we're healing. Not forever. We always want to be trying to grow out of that. But the SIGHI list gives us a pathway for how to grow out of that because you can start with all 0 and then slowly add 1 and then slowly add 2. And most of us will likely avoid 3 for the rest of our lives. And that's fine. I don't need walnuts. So anyway, it's a really fantastic resource that is free to the public. Don't ever let anyone try to sell it to you. Don't ever pay for a low histamine list. You'll probably get something that's outdated science, something that someone just wrote up in Canva that will unnecessarily restrict you. Really lean into the global science, which is what we do as a company and what I do personally in my life. And I'm amazed at how many foods are on there. And you just have to be willing to try new foods, right? So under the grain section, I am such a fan of teff. It is one of my favorite grains, teff flour, teff. I sprinkle it on instead of cream of wheat because I'm gluten-free. So instead of cream of wheat, I do the exact same recipe with cream of teff, and it's fantastic. It's a complete protein, actually. And so teff is a really fantastic ancient grain. A lot of other things, amaranth, that sort of thing. You just have to be willing to look at the SIGHI list and say, oh, I can try leeks. Okay, let me find some leek recipes. Yeah. I can have kale. Great. My recipe for this chicken and rice has spinach in it. I'm going to substitute kale. We always say don't eliminate foods. Substitute them because you want to increase that plant diversity. Substitutes. Kale is one of my favorite things. It's low histamine. It's 0 rated. It's kale and cabbage. Fantastic for salads and adding to soups and recipes, and it just increases the plant points. And anyway, that's the SIGHI list. I would highly recommend it to anyone out there trying to navigate their MCAS. Even if they don't want to do a low histamine diet, they'll find their triggers on the SIGHI list. They'll at least understand what's triggering them.
Something you said resonated so much with me because it's something I tell every single client I work with is don't eliminate, substitute.
Yes.
That is so, so important for many reasons, but for our gut, we have to support our gut. So much is involved in our gut microbiome being able to support us through inflammatory responses, through being able to support our immune system. I mean, it's so profound. So thank you for kind of touching on that piece. I'd love to hear a little bit more about your bars now. So you did talk a bit about kind of the thought process, the formulation a little bit, but can you talk a little bit more about the ingredients and why you chose like specific ingredients that might not be found in other bars?
Right. Absolutely.
For Consider This.
Sure, of course. And it's how we source our ingredients I'd love to talk about too, because I think it's important for people to understand the level of science that we lean into for this bar. It has to be for this community. You can't really create a community a bar for the low histamine community and not have it be, these are people who are really sick. I was really sick. You have to get it right. And so we very much lean into the science. We use the SIGHI list to choose our ingredients, and then we lab test on multiple levels. And I can tell you a little bit about that. And it's all expensive. The bars do cost a little bit more money. Our profit margin is the smallest in the industry. We've been in business a year and a half. We've yet to make any money. But, and I don't know that we will much in the long run. We're really focused on providing a safe food for this community because it matters so much to us. But I'd love to talk about that testing. First of all, we are a high plant bar. So a lot of protein bars will pride themselves on the fact that it's just 3 ingredients or whatever. Mm-hmm. That's not us because we are a microbiome bar. Our goal is to have it be whole plant ingredients, no chemical ingredients, and organic ingredients, but to get as many plant points into that bar as we can. So we have 8 to 10 plants depending on the bar. And that's just for microbiome diversity and health and immune stability. That was one of our goals. Each bar has nearly 40% of your daily fiber in one bar. And I can't tell you how many people we get emails from every day. This community is amazing, first of all. We never get any complaints. People are so kind, so supportive, such huge cheerleaders for us. We were out of stock for a couple months as we were shifting to a dedicated top 9 allergen-free facility. We ended up running out of stock, and people every day just would emails literally saying, "We're cheering for you. I can't wait for you to come back. This is the only bar I tolerate. This bar feels so good in my gut." And when I hear that, I know we got it right. This bar feels so, I eat it and it feels good in my gut, because that lets you know that your gut microbiome is down there saying, yes, lots of fiber. Exactly. Those little microbes are having a little dance party down there. They're so happy. And so that's a big part of our mission of why we chose these ingredients. And then we formulated it to be low moisture. And this is something most people don't think about. Think about it. We're going to take a food product and we're going to wrap it in foil. And the last thing we want is for there to be any risk at any point of any mold growing on that bar. And so every ingredient has to be a low moisture ingredient. That's something people don't think about. You may be eating a protein bar or a food product. If it's high moisture, you may not see the mold, but it might kind of be slowly developing that as it ages. Is it the histamine that's bothering you, or is it the aging of the food? And so by having low moisture ingredients, then we actually avoid that part of the science. And we also, every single batch that comes out from the production facility, we test for what's called an AW level, a water moisture level. And we make sure where like 7 is the safe point for mold, we have it below 0.06. And so like, it's just really, really low to make it safe. And it's that level of let's lab test, let's look at every ingredient, let's test every single ingredient for moisture content. So when you have the bars, they're a little more dry. You'll want to have it with a glass of water because they fall on the dry side because of that. But that's how we keep them safe for this community. Our rosemary is the only sort of preservative that we could use. We do not use rosemary extract, which is the less expensive version that most people will use. Above that, so you have rosemary extract is the cheapest type of thing you can find. It's chemically produced, and we don't have any part in that. Then you can find fresh rosemary, but it's quite often set in seed oil. And think about this. If we're making a big batch of protein bar dough, a 500-pound batch, rosemary is a dry ingredient. It will not distribute throughout that batch of dough. So you have to have it in a carrier. And that's something that we learn as we were working with this food formulator. We were learning. So seed oil is the standard carrier for that. It will not say seed oil on the packaging. They don't have to list it. But most of the time it's set in sunflower oil, which is a high histamine product. So we source our rosemary out of Denmark, and it's set in sea salt. It's the only one in the world that's set in sea salt. That's the level of attention that we pay for our ingredients. Pay to our ingredients, sorry.
Yeah.
And pay for our ingredients, actually.
I was going to say,
It
and
makes
that
them
too.
a lot more expensive. And every step of the way, we stopped and asked ourselves, this is going to make it more expensive. Like, we want it more accessible, but also we knew we couldn't slough on the science. We knew that we couldn't, that people would rather have 1 bar a day or 1 bar a couple times a week, and pay for that science and pay for everything to be done right. And our dates, most dates make the no list because they're dried with sulfites. So most people will say, the biggest pushback we get is people say dates are high histamine. They're not. They're rated 0 on the SIGHI list if they're sun-dried. The dates themselves are low histamine. It's because, especially in America, we speed up food production with chemicals. And so they sulfur dry the dates, and it's the sulfites, the sulfur, that's high histamine. And that's why dates make the high histamine list or the no list.
Yeah.
Again, when it's a yes or no list, that's when it's dangerous. You really want to look at the science and see what's in this food. And that's what the SIGHI list does. So dates are rated 0 on the SIGHI list. And all of our testing, we've had it tested many, many, many times, always comes back very, very low to no histamine in it. It's not a high histidine food, but it must be chemical free. So, of course, sun-dried dates are nearly twice the price of chemically dried dates. And so it's just figuring all that out and then trying to make them accessible. Of course, we do want them to be accessible to this community as well. So it's finding, the push to all those levers. But that's the way we source these ingredients. Every single ingredient is water tested, is lab tested for histamine. We look at that specific ingredients, like the apples also are totally sulfite free, only sun-dried. The quinoa, we use puffed quinoa. It has to be, no chemicals in it.
So much care and thought and research have gone into these bars. And that is why I've recommended them for my clients. When I discovered you about a year ago, I've had such good feedback as well from so many people that I've recommended these two. So thank you for creating such a beautiful product for people to safely enjoy, correct? And that's so cool. I actually didn't know that you could test like the, what did you call it? The water or the humidity or the wetness or whatever of the product. That's so fascinating. I had no idea, because that is so for a lot of my clients, I'd say about like half of my clients, they're dealing with mold toxicity as being a big driver for them. And so that makes a lot of sense in terms of like certain foods that aren't known as like aged foods, right? But because they might have a higher wet content, they are just developing a little bit of that mold growth. And that's what's triggering
little tiny
them.
microscopic.
Jeez.
So if you think about it, like mold in your walls is because you have water trapped. Right?
Mm-hmm.
If you have water on the counter, then it will dissipate. But water trapped is a problem. Well, if you're going to take a protein bar and wrap it in a foil, you're trapping
it,
all of that liquid. So, and you don't think of protein bars as moist, but so we are very careful about our dates. We source our dates from California. They are tested for mold. We get all those reports because dates can sometimes be an issue. We make sure they're the best of the best. We also, I'm going to jump here a bit quickly. Our brown rice protein, we independent lab test, third-party test for heavy metals as well. And we post that data right on our website. So every single ingredient is tested for whatever the problem in that ingredient may possibly be. And we source it at the highest level. We don't get the cheap Chinese company that, allows us to sell them for $1.25 a bar. Like, that's just not the materials we use. But the dates, the problem with dates is the mold risk. They're moister. So I'm not going to call out any bars here, but there are other date-based bars that are much moister. That is actually something, if you have mold toxicity, you should be concerned about. You want the drier bar. Yeah. Because my guess is they're not testing for AW levels. They're not testing for that water level. And then they wrap it, and, initially it may be fine, but the longer it sits in your car with the heat or whatever, the more risk you take. Yeah.
Do you source your dates from Joshua Tree? Is that where you're getting them from, or where, and what part of California are they coming from?
They actually come from northern central California.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. There's different family farms out there that we source
That's
from.
Awesome. Very cool.
Mm-hmm. And so, yes, every single, anyone, if you have MCAS and you're listening to this podcast, you know what I'm talking about. It's not just the ingredient. It's what goes into the ingredient, how the ingredient was made, every single aspect of that. And so that's the level at which we had to build it. And luckily we had a partner in this food formulator who was excited about that process and taught me so much as we built this company. Development for 2 years before we launched, because it was that level of science that we had to learn in order to get it right. Mm-hmm. But these are truly low histamine bars, high fiber. And again, it's really our mission is just to support this community that has so few safe food options. And to have a bar at the airport, if nothing else, to have a bar when you're at the airport.
Traveling. Oh, yeah, definitely. That's a big one for a lot of people. I get that question all the time. What do I eat when I'm traveling? I'm like, you can eat these bars.
Yeah, you can eat these bars.
Yeah,
and they're going to stay with you, like
exactly.
they have some protein and some fiber, so they're going to actually stay with you a little bit. Yeah. Anyway.
No, it's wonderful. Regarding the bars, just one more question regarding kind of the formulation. The lab testing you were talking about, I had seen you talk about ISO lab testing. Is that can you just dive a little bit deeper into what that testing marker means? What is that specifically testing for?
It's such a good question. That just means it's an independent lab. We don't test these ourselves. It's third-party lab tested, or ISO means independent standard operating lab, totally independent of us. We send it out to a separate company and we post those results on our website. That's just part of us being transparent for this community. It's really important that people know it's not just our word, and it's not just based on the SIGHI list. We want to make sure the products we actually get are the products we think they are. And so we test them. We actually test them before making the bars, because we don't want to run a whole production batch and then have it not work. So, to be prudent in business, we test every ingredient as it comes in for water moisture to make sure it is what it's supposed to be, and for histamine and tyramine, because tyramine is also a migraine trigger for many. So we test both histamine and tyramine. And then we make the bars, and then we test it again as a finished product. And that data is listed on our website.
Awesome. Thank you for explaining that. So we've kind of covered a lot of good information regarding, what has been so helpful to you on your journey, figuring out your root causes, figuring out the nervous system side of things, and getting the right type of nutrition in, and then ultimately formulating a bar that's safe and good and well tested to make sure that it is still nourishing you while allowing you to get food in while you're working through the histamine component. Now, I want to ask you this, because a lot of people, when they're going through flares, that is one of the hardest things ever, because you're already dealing with some restriction. You're dealing with just navigating through your MCAS journey or histamine intolerance journey. And so what word of advice could you give to people regarding if they're going through a flare, and how maybe they can reframe their mind around that, or what they can do to help support themselves, and maybe something that helped you when you were going through some of your harder times?
I'd be happy to share that. This is I can only share my personal experience,
of course.
So, but I'm so happy to do that, because it takes a village to get through this. We have to find our community and rely on each other. That's the only way we're going to make it through. And I do think that's really important. Now, I'll share an experience I had. It is a faith-based experience. So for people who that works for, this might be helpful. But for me, it was really helpful. Early on, when I was struggling so much, I was just feeling really depressed. I was having a day where I was especially low. I had work that day and couldn't think properly and came home and realized that this job that took me years to work into that I love so much, it was a realization that I probably wouldn't be able to continue in that job anymore. And it wasn't anything formal, but I just had this like prayer on my heart, like, please, Lord, just help me heal, help me find a way through this. I'm willing to do the work. I'm willing to figure it out, but help me figure this out, please. And the answer I got was so clear, and it was not the answer I wanted. It was expect to be symptom free, and not what I expected, but so clearly that was the impression I got. And, that is actually a really, really important mindset. If we are looking for the cure and we're sure that the next supplement, the next protein bar, the next salad we eat, the next perfect grain soup or whatever it is, right, is going to be the cure, then we are forever setting ourselves up for a series of disappointments. It is a ladder to come out of MCAS. It is a ladder. It is one step at a time, building upon the step before. And it takes some time, but I want to give people hope through my story. There is 100% a way through this, and there is a wonderful life, but it is a ladder, and you have to think of it that way. And if every day or every time you have a flare, you feel like you've lost, then mentally and nervous system wise, you are taking a step backwards, right? So if I expect flares to be part of my life, then I'm okay when that day comes. I know that's going to be part of my life, and I don't get upset by it because that's not good for my nervous system. It'll just damage the work that I've done. And so I am grateful for the days I have to take off, and I just allow myself to do that. Now, I'm not a young mom. I'm 57. It's much, much more difficult. I have to give credit for, if I were 35 with young children going through this, it would be exponentially more difficult. And so it's unfair of me just to say, oh, just put yourself to bed for a day. So you have to find your way through those days, but don't beat yourself up. Allow it to be part of your life. And as you do that and work to find your solutions, I promise you those days will get further and further apart. And you'll just all of a sudden find yourself, I've gone a whole month and I didn't have a single flare day. I've gone 6 weeks and I haven't had a single flare day. Now, a few weeks ago, I was feeling really good because I was trying this nutrozepatide treatment, and it really was making me feel that 10-15% better is actually a lot.
Yes.
And so I was like, I think I'm going to try some prosciutto. I decided to have prosciutto, which is about the highest histamine food you can have. And I couldn't tolerate it.
I love the
before.
confidence.
Yeah, I was just like, I'm going to put some prosciutto on this cauliflower crust that I have. I have like my little cauliflower crust, and then I do like a garlic oil instead of a tomato sauce. A garlic oil on it is delicious. And then I had my zucchini slices and stuff. And I'm like, I'm going to put some prosciutto on this. My husband had picked some up. I was in bed for 2 days. I had a 2-day migraine. Like, it just triggered a major flare in me. I knew what caused it. I took hope in that. I can avoid prosciutto now. I know I can have the pizza without prosciutto. I'll be fine. So find your substitutions. I'm still eating the pizza. I'm not eating chicken and rice. I found my cauliflower crust. I use my roasted garlic and oil sauce on it. I put my zucchini and red onion on it, and it's delicious, Fresh mozzarella is so good on it. And so I still have the pizza. I'm just not having the prosciutto.
Yeah.
Avoiding your flares, and when you make a mistake or you try something that doesn't work, just not beating yourself up over it. Just allow it to be part of the healing process, and tell yourself these days will get fewer and fewer apart. And when I have my flare days, I tell myself this used to be my whole life. This used to be every day. So now when it comes every 2 months, it's okay. It's okay. I can have that day, and I know that I'm going to move on. Also, on the COVID front, we lost dear people in our lives to COVID. My mother-in-law died of COVID. She was the 4th Utah death. My husband lost his mother to COVID. She died very quickly. She was in her 70s, her late 70s, and had some health issues, but of course we didn't expect it. She just got COVID and died very quickly. I find myself of that too. I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to be with my family. Chronic illness is a journey. It's a ladder to work through and pull yourself out of it. But I'm grateful for the life I have and staying focused on all of the blessings in my life and how I can help this community, what I can do in my life. The lessons that I've learned have made me a more compassionate person, a more compassionate friend. I'm grateful for the journey I've had with MCAS. And that sounds crazy. I would not have said that
No.
4 years ago.
Oh, no, Tess, it doesn't. And, thank you very much for saying what you said. That was very powerful. And I always, something I tell people a lot is that I always try to tell people as well, because myself, I went through the journey too. It's a journey. And like, you'll start to notice like you get better and better and better. And the days that you're better are better than the days that you're not feeling well. And it's so easy as human beings to be accustomed to our new normal and almost forget the pain that we were going through before. Because I'll have clients that'll be like, oh my God, like when I first meet with them, they're having a whole list of symptoms. I meet with them again. Those symptoms have dropped down by a few, right? But they're still feeling like, but why am I not like fully better yet? And I'm like, well, you're having better gut motility. You're not having more histamine reactions to these specific foods. Your brain fog is like 50% better. Like, we just become accustomed to like our new normal and we kind of forget. I absolutely am still that way sometimes. Like I'll go through my life. I'm like, man, I wish that like this was better. I'm like, wait, this is better. Like there's so many things that are better. If you take a second to stop, be intentional and realize that all the improvements you've made, that goes so far for your nervous system and just expanding its ability to be able to heal as well, because mast cells are so deeply intertwined with our nervous system and how it can become this vicious cycle of if our mast cells are stressed, our nervous system becomes really stressed and vice versa. We can do so much by just taking a second, being intentional and just almost making a list of what you're grateful for.
Yes,
I think can go such a long way.
Be proud of yourself.
And be proud
of yourself. If you're listening to this podcast and you're paying attention to your health and you're figuring out the puzzle and taking that ladder step, like be so proud of yourself. That's amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. I 100% agree. And, I think this is a good note to end on because thank you just so much for your words of wisdom, for explaining your brand, what brought you to it. It's just been such a wonderful conversation with you. So I'd love to leave you with any last words or information we may not have gone over you wanted the audience to hear, any further plans you have for Consider This Nutrition, and then where people can find you.
Okay. I would love to give a coupon code. If you use the code NEWFRIEND, that's new friend, right? New friend, all caps, you can get 20% off your order on our website. We sell on our website and Amazon. Amazon is actually on intake right now. It takes them a month to intake. So we just sent them a new order and it'll probably be up in about 2.5, 3 weeks. But it's less expensive on our website, actually. If you use that code, you could use not on Amazon, on our website, and that'll give you an extra 20% off.
Thank you.
We have a super liberal, I'd like to talk about our return policy. We have a no questions asked return policy. If they don't work for you for any reason, we are so happy to refund your order, including shipping. We will never question that. We're here to support this community. And if they don't work for you, or even if you just don't like them, even if you're just like, it wasn't my taste, you can get a refund on that order. That's never a problem. I think it's really important for people to know. When we built this company, we said we want to be the Nordstroms of protein bars as far as customer service goes. Whatever the customer needs is what we want to provide them because they have enough on their plate. The last thing they need to deal with is a problem with a company. So we will do anything we can. Just reach out to us on our website. There's a email address. We are going to be adding protein powders. So in Q4 of this year, because we do so much work sourcing our brown rice protein and then independent lab testing it to make sure it doesn't have any heavy metals in it, that's not easy to find. It's actually grown by a company that specifically grows it not to have heavy metals in it, not sourced from China. Because people are becoming more aware of this, they have companies that are responding, which is wonderful for our community. Anyway, so we have that. And then pumpkin seed protein. That's my favorite. Pumpkin seed protein.
Pumpkin seed protein.
It has a shorter shelf life, a higher moisture content. So we don't use it in our bars because of that. But at home, that is my go-to. Organic pumpkin seed protein. It is nearly a complete protein. And it's really a great option for smoothies or to mix into your oatmeal or whatever. But we're going to start selling pumpkin seed protein and brown rice protein Q3. That'll be our next little addition to the company.
Oh my gosh, that is exciting. Well, I'm glad I asked that because that's going to be hugely profound for people too, because that's also a little limited on what people can buy right now with low histamine protein powders. So very cool to hear that's on the market for you guys.
Trust, just ones.
Exactly.
Because there was a pumpkin seed protein that I used on Amazon and I really liked it. And then when we started sourcing different proteins and working on this company, I learned how to look up companies to see if they had any complaints against them. And this company was out of California, California is wonderful to keep record of any kind of complaints. Yeah. And it had it has an issue with heavy metals in it. And the company was just ignoring it, even for pumpkin seed protein, which typically isn't high in heavy metals. And that was life-changing for us. And I said to my husband, I will not build this company unless we source this safely. And it was a lot of work, like all of our ingredients, to find and figure out and source. And then we independent test it too. And so it's easy for us to add it because we've already done the work, but hopefully we'll help this community just have peace of mind, knowing that they can come to our website and whatever they buy there is going to be truly lab tested and what it says it is.
That's awesome. Well, the intention you bring into your company and your work is very profound. It speaks numbers to how much you care about. Both you and your husband care so much about this community. So thank you for all you're doing and the educational piece too. Exactly. Yeah, you have been there. Well, thank you so much, Tess. It was so great getting to chat with you. I can't wait. I'll link all this in the show notes. Thank you so much for being a guest.
Thank you for having me.